Oh, you're good.
All right, now it's going.
Hi, everyone. Luke here. How's it going? Just interviewing Matt here from Integrative Thoughts. Yeah, I kind of learned about him from, so Lewis was on your podcast, right?
Yeah, I
Recently?
haven't released that yet, though.
Right. So, yeah, look forward for that.
Mm-hmm.
What's happening?
Yeah, it's coming out next week or two, I think.
Yeah, apparently you guys talked for like 3 hours.
It was a while. I tend to,
Good.
I believe personally with most things that I don't like to give into like short attention spans and social media. Social media is great for marketing and doing short clips and doing what you do there. But I think a lot of these nuanced subjects really need longer format, especially like someone like I had just put out an episode with Clark that most people in this space know, Engelbert, like his depth of knowledge around just heavy metals alone. When I hear him on like an hour-long podcast, to me feels very rushed for like the depths of information that he technically could go into and that he wants to go into. So I like to give people longer chances to explain whatever things in detail, especially if they've really gotten into the nitty-gritty of it. And then sometimes I do shorter, hour-long, hour and 20. It's not always 3 hours, but if there is someone like Clark who will talk and really has the knowledge, I'll let him go.
Yeah, the human textbook himself.
Yeah.
No, Clark knows so much about minerals. Him and Aaron, I would say, out of the two people I've talked to, know more about mineral science than, Clark knows more about mineral science than I do. I was his first practitioner on this program, and but me and I would say Lewis is a little bit more like this too. We're not so much like textbooky; we're a little more intuitive.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's just like, oh, this program kind of works, and like we understand like it's more of a feeling. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I think it's just people learn in different ways. People aggregate information different ways. I would say Clark and Aaron are a little bit more like they know like more about the science definitely than especially like me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like it's appealing to some people that like that, and then for others. I know full well that other people will listen to my episode with Susan, which is a lot more digestible than listening to Aaron or Clark, so there's like, that's why I'm trying to give everybody a little bit of a platform who I think's doing the program right, because everybody has a different way of kind of like explaining it. And sometimes for people who can't understand Clark, or he's talking about presynaptic, neurons and this and that. And that's too much for somebody, especially if they're in burnout and they really have brain fog. That's a lot. So listening to someone like Susan and it's real digestible is cool. So I like to give everybody a shot,
Yeah. She's got a little more of that feminine touch in some ways. I think sometimes women, they're a little more sociable. And she's worked with so many clients. I think she knows how to make it more digestible.
Mm-hmm.
Just because she's worked with so many normal people. Like she was my coach. I talk about like Clark was one of my clients. Susan was my coach. So she's been in this game longer than just about anyone.
Yeah, she's great. I'm in her course currently right now.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think a lot of people have gone through a course, and it's good that someone has taken the lead in that role of someone that can train people for it.
Yeah, she's really great with, I think how you just basically explained it. She's had a lot of like clients and she's done a lot of calls, and she's had to break it down in a more digestible form for all of them over almost 2 decades, where she does that for you. She also gives you a lot of like quick references, because people think like they're just like, look, we're just looking at these ratios and it's like super easy, and it's actually very complex. And she gives you a lot of like reference guides that I basically printed out so I can like get to those really quick when I, instead of looking through all of the text. Like she has like a lot of quick guides on the supplements, on the ratios, how to supplement. Yeah. So she's done a really good job with it. And she's got some videos about like when you are having client consultations, how to, basically break it down for them, what questions to ask. So she's done a really good job with her course.
Yeah, I think one thing that you'll realize, you might have already kind of realized it as you're learning about it, is setting up programs for people is actually quite easy. It's actually pretty straightforward. The hardest part is just managing clients. You know what I mean? Making it
I just
digestible.
texted Aaron that
Yeah.
actually when I was, because I've done the
Yes.
readings, right, and all the questions
Yeah.
like the Dr. Wilson books, Dr. Eck books, and I
Mhm.
got into all that, and now I'm
Yeah.
in the last portion where you just kind of read 6 charts and send it to her, and I was like,
Yeah.
well, actually, this isn't as hard as you think. You just
No,
gotta
it's quite
it.
simple. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, it's
It's,
actually it seems harder when you're
yeah.
explaining it to somebody, but the
Yeah.
actual programs are relatively easy.
Yeah. Especially like, are they in four lows? You know, are they in fast or slow oxidation? What's their NAK ratio? And based off of
Yeah.
those three things, that's like 90% of their program.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then once you get the hang of it, you can set up a program within 2 minutes.
Yeah. So
You know
I'm
what I
looking
mean?
forward to it. It's this program has done so much for me. I've been extremely sick for a long time. I had a lot of immunological problems growing up, childhood traumas, growing up in Flint, Michigan without a father. He was on drugs. And
Hmm.
as I got older, that led into a lot of partying, even though I made money and I was
Hmm.
growing cannabis and making my own money, was my own boss because it was legal there, but I was just partying whenever. And
Yeah. Yeah.
once I moved to Florida, I was like, I'm going to get sober. We're just working out. I've always loved to work out, even though I partied. So I've always like taken supplements like all the time. So like I would party all night and wake up and eat healthy and take vitamins. It was this crazy, like double life almost. And
Hmm.
once I got to Florida and got sober and quit smoking and quit, taking Adderall and shit like that, I was like, dude, my brain is fried. Like I thought I was just like going to bounce back in like 2 or 3 months, with some sunlight, with some,
Right.
runs. And I was screwed up, man. I was down bad.
Yeah.
And I've seen a lot of different doctors, some of the most prestigious doctors in the world, in my opinion. Dr. Minkoff, some people may know him. He's like got an 85% success rate at curing cancer and Lyme. And I left his office after a $20,000 protocol, still with severe neurological issues, fatigue, brain fog, forgetfulness. There's like, they say these heavy metals are linked to Alzheimer and dementia and neurological issues. And I felt like in my 30s, I kind of had some of those, like
Oh
no one
yeah.
would call it Alzheimer's because you're
Yeah.
32 and you're 34, but that's what it felt like before I got in
No,
this
for
program.
sure. No, yeah. Yeah, I had a similar experience. I had terrible brain fog, and just when I distinctly remember I had a roommate and I was eating quinoa, and she was like, "If you eat quinoa, you're healthy." Like that's like the normal perception from a lot of people. Like if you're someone that eats quinoa, there's no way that you can possibly need more than that.
Yeah, and I had gotten sober. I had moved down south where there's more sunlight. So
Right.
without the alcohol, without the drugs and the lack of sleep, so I had a tan. I was less bloated. So to like my
Mhm.
family and friends, I had actually looked better than I ever have, but I felt worse than I ever have. So it was this weird like they couldn't understand it because I had changed so much about my lifestyle. And I've been listening to Ben Greenfield's podcast for like 7 years and was getting into biohackings and buying saunas and
Mhm.
still just felt like I was healthier and more strict than anyone I knew. I did strict carnivore, I did vegan, I did every diet you could think of, keto, and I just felt worse than pretty much anyone that I knew. Like, and they were all thought I was like this like
Okay.
healthy god, and I felt like I was dying inside.
Yeah. So how did you first discover nutritional balancing?
So I'm actually a fan of Mito Life and Matt Blackburn, and we chat on
Hmm.
Instagram every once in a while. I've never met him or anything, but he follows me, and we chat here and there. And I just was I was getting into minerals, and I started to have this idea that I've always taken like magnesium. Everyone kind of hears that you should take magnesium, and I'm taking the Bioptimizer's magnesium, and then started getting more into like Morley Robbins and learning about copper and the roles of copper. And he has different ideologies than what we have, but he's very smart and had done a lot of research around copper. And then I started to realize like how important all of the minerals are instead of just like magnesium, right? And like sea salt. And so then, after reading Morley's book a couple times and trying that, didn't really get much results. Then I, was in Jason Hammel's group. He's actually still the highest listened to podcast on my entire podcast. Kind of crazy because I don't even follow the protocol, but he's got like 30,000 people in his Facebook group. So that I think the podcast is like linked up top. So it's probably easy
Hmm.
access for people. But, so then I played around with that and, people do knock his protocol and I do think for good reason. But I did feel a little bit better from doing the the copper protocol because there's also zinc on there and some B vitamins. And then there's, he gets into a lot of the nitty gritty around like smaller minerals that people don't really think about, molybdenum and this and that. And he would share a lot of science and it's especially kind of around like forms and like also on vitamin C and different things. So that really got me into like, oh, different forms matter. Let me try the bisglycinate. Let me try this form, try different forms of everything, see what would move the needle. And I actually did release a lot of parasites. I was sleeping better on that for a bit. I got some color back, got like a little bit of tone back. My wife was noticing some changes just from his protocol with no testing. And so, but after a while, which I know now, I probably was maybe fast oxidation in the beginning, or who knows what was happening because I didn't have a test. But over time, I didn't feel as good, which means probably something shifted from taking all of these random doses of everything. And I was probably no longer taking the right minerals that were working for me anymore. And I tried to play around with the dosings of that protocol for a while. And then back to the Mito Life, I was still listening to Mito Life radio here and there. And I heard the episode with Clark, actually, Engelbert. And it felt like, something just inside my soul was like, this seems like the right way. And he had such depth to it. And seemed like a lot of the things I had been researching from, adrenal fatigue was like my first diagnosis, and all of the mineral things that I have been learning about copper and zinc and everything through the years of Morley and Jason and just other podcasts started to kind of come together. So then I followed him on Instagram. I chatted with him. And then ironically enough, I was talking about Clark because I was thinking about working with him, and another biohacking buddy down here sent me Aaron Redox, his page. And he goes, this is the mineral guy that I follow and that I like. I got a hair test through him. And then I started to notice that Aaron and Clark were very similar. Like Dr. Paul X seemed like the same protocol. So I'm chatting with both of them. And then me and
both
Aaron.
In fast oxidation. They're both fast.
Yeah, they're both ready to respond and chat with you about mineral balancing all day. And they're both obsessed with it. And so, I gathered a bunch of knowledge from them. And I had what originally was funny. I was like, I want to do HTMA to see what my hair test looks like after doing high copper for a year. Just super curious. I'm like, is the copper through the roof? Is it, what's going on? And so I was like, and then maybe I thought maybe I was going to stay on the copper protocol and keep doing hair tests over time just to see what happened. But then I got the results back from Aaron, and just really the way he analyzed it, and I talked to him about it, I was like, you know what? I think I'm just going to do the actual protocol that Aaron recommended. I'm going to give it a shot. And I'm not going to say it was easy. All the, neurological stuff I had going on, I had a lot tougher time than the other people that I've put on this protocol through Aaron. And not to say it's been easy for them either, but definitely not as like rough and down bad as I was, because I think I was just a little bit sicker. I've released a lot of parasites, heavy metals been kind of crazy on the charts, retracing a lot. I had ear infection, cold sores I used to get popping back up. And, what's funny is one thing that really made me feel like I was moving the needle, like on a deep level, was in high school, I used to get these fungal infections on my face right here. And they basically would have no answers for it. They would just like give me a cream or like an antibiotic, an antifungal cream, an antibiotic. And like, I would get them all the time and they just never had an answer. And like a few months into the protocol, I had one of those rashes, and I hadn't had one since high school. And that made me feel like on a deep level that something was going on in my immune system that was like coming back online, back from like that was maybe shut off potentially for 15 years. So that helped me keep going, and the parasites. But yeah, it was really just the Mito Life podcast with Clark, and then chatting with Clark and Aaron, and then forming the relationship with Aaron that got me into it.
Yeah. You, Aaron, and Clark all kind of remind me of each other. You're all kind of fast off.
I vibe with both of them very well.
Yeah, that's cool. That's awesome. It's good to find your tribe, and find some people that you could connect with on that level. So how long ago did you start the program? How long ago was that?
I think I've been on it 9 months, and okay. I've had the rockiest road, but this is probably the best that I've felt in years, potentially right now. Still need some naps and stuff. Currently still sleeping a little bit longer than I think probably normal, but obviously just pretty normal for the protocol, from at least from what I've read. If you sleep 9 hours, they're like, good, you're healing like on some deep level, right? So I've been kind of giving myself some grace. Obviously, you can't be as productive as I like to be. I'm like a type A kind of driven person, but I
Mm-hmm.
knew in the state that I was in that, I was never going to accomplish what I wanted if I didn't get to the root of whatever my neurological symptoms were.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's awesome. Um, and so currently, what is your last hair test? You're in fast oxidation. Was your low NAK?
No, it was. I got results right after we talked, actually, and the NAK up, which we'll get to later, boosted my ratio super high. So I'm back on the zinc, and
It's
I'm
always
in
nice.
mixed.
Always nice to get back on zinc.
Yeah,
Be-
yeah, dude. When we talked, actually, I think my ratios had just shifted, this is cool. Where I feel like you basically have to go through the retracings and the protocol to really understand it before you can even be a practitioner, because I was feeling really good dumping a bunch of metals on the NAK up and the SBF and being in fast oxidation. And then right towards the end, like while I was waiting on results, I started to have like spotty sleep, kind of tossing and turning, not sleeping 6.5, 7 hours when I was sleeping like, 8.5, 9. So not sleeping as well. So then I definitely needed a nap or felt more fatigued in the day. And I felt
Mhm.
more like wound up. And then I
Mhm.
got my results right after we spoke, and I had shifted back into mixed oxidation with a high NAK. So now I'm back on
Mhm.
zinc, a couple megapans. And within the first day of just doing zinc, I calmed down. I felt super chill. Like it was
Yeah.
crazy how it worked.
Yeah, being on zinc. Yeah, when your NAK flips up and then going back on the zinc always feels amazing.
Oh,
It
dude, I
does. Like,
felt literally the first
yeah.
day. I didn't have my results back yet, even. And Aaron goes, quit taking the NAK up, quit taking the SPF, get on zinc and take some Megapan. I'll have your results in a couple days. The instant
Yeah.
that I took that zinc, like I felt like my nervous system just settled. I slept good that
Yeah.
night. I was like, wow, that's how crazy this program is, right? Like, that's why, the HTMA people do criticize something like Jason's protocol, where it's like you're just going to take the same minerals for an
Mhm.
indefinite amount of time and act like nothing's ever going to shift, and it does. And so I was on just zinc like the first 4 months, and then for like 3 or 4 months I was on the NAK up and
Mhm.
limcoman and SPF, and then now I'm back on zinc, and that is where I've been feeling best. And that's really the ideal, to really measure something and then go based off the ratios and the measurements.
Yeah, and people don't realize that minerals are quite powerful and they can actually make you feel worse. Something like NAK up is quite powerful, right? And if you have a high some potassium ratio and you just start taking it, you're gonna feel worse. You're gonna feel more
Yeah,
wound up. You're gonna feel. A lot
that's
of
where
people
I
don't
was
realize
like when
that.
we talked. I was feeling like I was starting to get like I was getting things done. I felt like, because it was like it was like revving the engine up, but almost too much, right? I started to like not sleep that well at night, and it just all it took was that one first dose of zinc, and I was just like settled. It was crazy.
Yeah, yeah, you can kind of get to the point. You're probably getting to that point already. Is like you can kind of feel when you flip.
That
So a
was
lot
the
of
first
times
time I
I'll.
recognized it. I was like, I think
Yeah,
my because
yeah.
when I was in the throes of it, the first like 6 7 months, you just kind of always feel like kind of like low energy, low mood, and
Hmm.
then that last time, I was like, I know something flipped. Like I'm not sleeping
Yeah,
right. I'm feeling off.
yeah, yeah. That's an important, like I would say, hallmark, like an important place to get in the program is getting to the point where you kind of know what it feels like, and you kind of know, you kind of get to the point where you know when something shifted. Um, so that's great. That's great that you've gotten to that point. Um, sometimes I'll actually, even before I get another test, I'll know that my NAK flipped and I'll start taking zinc or something. Sometimes you can kind
Yeah,
of, yeah,
that's
you
interesting.
can
I
feel
always
it.
wondered how to discern as a practitioner, like moving forward, between how to tell somebody if it's a detox reaction or if it's actual like you need a new test. But I'm sure I'll get there. I'm sure there's ways you guys ask certain questions or something.
Yeah, part of it is just learning. Um, I would say that like if they switch into fast oxidation or something like that, it's more persistent.
Hmm.
It's more like co- consistent trouble sleeping, anxiety, and stuff like that, as opposed to something like a detox reaction. And then a hallmark of that would be that if they stop the supplements, so let's say it might be a detox reaction, right? And they stop the supplements, but then the symptoms continue. That can be a sign that they switch into fast oxidation or something. That they're still getting anxiety. Because most of the time, if you stop the supplements and you slow down the program, the detox will kind of slow down.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it's important to, a lot of people, especially like new clients, they don't realize like you're not going to go backwards on a program. You know what I mean? If you stop your supplements for a few days or you take less or whatever, a lot of people get that misconception. Like you're always moving forward, right? So a lot of the program's almost like a movement, like you're moving forward towards better health, and you can slow that down at any time. But you're not going backwards. Even if you have a cheat meal and stop taking your supplements for a few days or a week or whatever, you're not going backwards. You're just going forward less, more slowly.
Yeah, I mean, I was in Costa Rica for 15 days for like a late honeymoon, and obviously, like you were eating seed oils. It was hard to. I was trying to get them to cook it in butter, and they just no speak of English. They didn't give a shit about me wanting my stuff in butter. So we kind of just dealt with it, tried to eat as clean as possible, but obviously it wasn't perfect. Had some drinks, and I just took supplements still, and my ratio slipped a lot even in that period.
Yeah, and people don't realize, like, if you get healthier on the program, like you can eat seed oils or whatever once in a while. Like if you're healthy, like your body can handle those things. Your body shouldn't be to the point where like you have a terrible reaction to anything outside of like cooked vegetables and meat. Like you always want that to be the staple of the program. But your body should be able to get to the point where it can handle other things. It can handle, some trauma.
Yeah, that's what I've noticed that already just from eliminating a lot of parasites and stuff. Like my wife and I, we cook pretty much every meal, but every once in a while you want to go out to a steak dinner or whatever, and I eat the bread or I have the dessert or whatever, and wow, well that used to wreck me when I had more like the mold symptoms and the Lyme and had the heavy metals that were all lingering everywhere. I would get wrecked by something like that, but I would just do it, and just suck it up. But now I kind of do that stuff, and I'm just like, okay, cool.
Yeah. A lot of people don't realize your body should be able to handle that. That's why, when we're trying to recover like true health, like truly healthy people, like elite athletes and stuff, they eat junk food. Like, they can handle it. Some of them more than others, obviously, but yeah, you're not going backwards.
Yeah, I mean, Susan is pretty good with that. She breaks that down in her course about even if you start people really slow, small amounts, like it's still the program and it still actually moves the ratios over time. Yeah, maybe not as fast as how I've been doing it because I'm kind of a psycho and I'll just do the enemas and do the sauna and just power through. But not everyone,
I think you're also healthier than I think you're healthier than you realize.
Yeah, I mean, it's just been rough. I think a lot of the metals were in my brain, and that's what's caused it to feel worse because I had a lot of fillings, and I know like the mercury will go straight to the brain, aluminum can be in the brain, and I've tried a lot of other detox protocols in the past that I also wonder if like maybe the binders and stuff I was taking were just like moving the metals around and they were even getting recirculated to my brain, which I know can happen, redistribution type thing. So I just think a lot of it was like I could feel the pounding like right here through like right to my temple. So I think a lot of it was just moving in my brain, which made the like brain fog more than what the normal person is if they didn't have like 8 mercury fillings,
Yeah. I think you probably had a pretty good base of health actually. So how were you as a child? Were you pretty athletic?
Oh, I would crush the sports, man. I loved it. I've worked out since middle school. Like I said, even in college when I drank all the time, I would wake right up and go to the gyms. I've always I started taking supplements in high school. I was powerlifting, so I was doing like protein powders and creatine and multivitamins and stuff in high school. In college, I would spend every last little dollar that I had. I didn't have a bunch of money. I was like serving tables. I'd spend every dollar at GNC, before we knew what good supplements were. I'd just go in there and ask the clown who works at GNC what was good and just listen to him and ask questions. But yeah, I've always tried to stay healthy. And, I cut out seed oils 7 years ago, but this is like a thing now, right? But like I've been listening to Ben Greenfield's podcast and a lot of these biohacking podcasts for like 7 years. And so, I've made a lot of the choice. I've been eating grass-fed meat for probably 6, 7 years, regenerative stuff, local produce when I can find it, so I have a lot of biohacks at the house. I have a PMF mat. I have an ozone machine. I have an infrared sauna with red light. I have grounding mats that I sleep on. So I have structured, super clean, pure water. So there's things that I do, air purifiers that really probably move the needle as well.
Yeah, yeah. I asked that because I can kind of it's kind of says so I can kind of tell by your face actually that you have a more athletic face. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's why I asked.
That's been the hardest part of the program, actually, is not being able to work out. That's kind of like my sanctuary. I love to hit the weight room. I love to go to yoga. And I really have I know that they say to just chill, even if you get some energy back, so I've just been spending time meditating on the PMF mat, trying to get the red light. So that's the hardest part for me. And I don't want to push it too soon because I'm getting good results and seeing a lot of the metals move around. And for me, that's more important than just getting back in the gym and crushing it. So that has been the hardest part for me though, because that's kind of like my therapy.
Yeah. One thing you'll kind of see with clients too. So I think in your case, you actually had a pretty good base of health. I can tell that you probably had more testosterone in the womb. You have a stronger jaw. That's why I can tell. That's why I thought that you probably were into athletics. So I think you actually had a pretty good base of health, and then it's more like you burnt yourself out, and you got like the fillings, and like you were working out too much, and you just kind of got to a point where you burned out. But there was still a good base there that you could get back to, where you could be I would say you're more of like an alpha male. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, in Chinese astrology, I'm a dragon. I don't know if anyone's into woo-woo stuff, but it's like the most alpha of all the signs. And I definitely did a lot of it to myself, a lot of the childhood trauma stuff. And growing up in Flint, Michigan in general, you see a lot of crazy shit. Kind of everyone's doing drugs and partying. So I would do drugs all night, barely sleep, go to the gym, go do whatever I was doing to make money at the time, and just wash, rinse, repeat, and so I was just kind of like, I felt like a work hard, play hard type of thing. And it just burnt, after you do that for a decade, I was burnt out and I had a lot of neurological stuff.
So I would say you're a little less of a copper type personality, and you're a little bit more of you're just a higher testosterone, more athletic. It's part of it's genetic too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Some men are just genetically more predisposed to be athletes and more alpha males, I would say. A little more higher testosterone, higher level, and the other certain hormones as well. One thing you'll notice is that other men, though, they have a little bit of a different experience. I would put myself in that category. So a lot of like children in our society, they are like teenage boys and stuff. They never really have that experience because they were born quite sick. So they never had a high testosterone level. They were never able to work out like that. They've had brain fog basically since they were a child, and they don't know any different. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then it can be it's kind of a different experience. I kind of went through this. If you've never had high testosterone, and then all of a sudden you feel your testosterone rising for maybe the first time ever in your life, it's a different sort of experience. You know what I mean? It's traumatic in some ways, right?
Yeah, I guess if you've never really been like high performing, like, I was squatting 600 pounds in high school, like I was doing all kinds of crazy stuff. Was like,
I could barely in
really
high
good at
school,
football.
I could do like a pull up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I came from a big football family. We're also one generation away from like a bunch of like hillbilly farming people in West Virginia. Like my grandpa like worked on the farm. I think he had like a middle school education, just like big farm boy. And then my dad's huge. I've met him a couple times, but my dad's like 6'6". He's like a big monster. So I don't know if he played sports or anything when he was younger, but he's a big dude.
Yeah. But and so like with the program, like it'll make men more manly. You know what I mean?
I can imagine, right? Obviously, when you're reading, a lot of these minerals have different, feminine and masculine qualities. The copper and the zinc, and then if you get those into balance, it probably would make a female more feminine, if I had to guess, and a male more manly. And, that is
Yeah,
kind of a big issue in society. It's a touchy subject,
it's a
but
huge issue.
I do think that the toxins and the mineral imbalances and stuff are causing a lot of like the gender identity stuff at, rising at such a rapid pace.
Yes, and lower testosterone men are easier to control.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
if you have high testosterone, you're more and you feel more in control of your life.
Hmm.
And you're able to make sharper, quicker, more calculated decisions, and it goes along with this masculinity in general. You don't depend on the government as much. You don't depend on other people as much. You're more self sufficient. You want to be, you're less agreeable.
Which I think is a reason why the toxins are more allowed in America, because we have the most rights. We really are the world leaders and the resistance, if you look back in history.
Mm-hmm.
And so for us to obey in the way that we do and to take orders, and we've seen it, in 2020 and all the, we see it time and time again,
Mm-hmm.
we basically need to poison a country who really was founded on having
Right.
rights, being able to bear arms, having freedom of speech. A lot of countries don't have that. So for us to sit down and obey, they basically, in my opinion, knew that the toxicity and that, whether the heavy metals are planned or not, I kind of think they are. And they needed to dumb us down quite a bit, because we're raised on different beliefs. We were raised that we should have freedom of speech. We should talk how we want. You government do their thing, I'm going to do my thing. You stay out of my business and I'll stay out of yours type of mentality. But for them to gain a little bit of control, they needed to dumb us down quite a bit. And you see that just in the food system, the food chain, what's allowed here in comparison to like, the EU or the European nations. It's completely different. Drinking water is contaminated. So I think a lot of that stuff is definitely premeditated.
Yeah, a lot of it's premeditated. A lot of it is just the natural ebb and flow of civilizations.
Yeah,
You know
it's a
what I mean?
mixture. It's a
Yeah,
mixture
yeah.
of industrialization and technological advances, but
Mm-hmm.
also I feel like we've shifted dramatically as a country into, a little bit. I think all governments for all of humanity, when they get power, have a little bit of corruption involved, but it's got
Mm-hmm.
dramatically worse, or we've just gotten way more access to it, one of the two. And it seems like it's worse than ever. And for us to just sit back and deal with that, you would need people who are overworked, don't have the time to worry about it, who have
Mm-hmm.
low energy, who have low hormones. It's a mixture of
Yes.
everything. So I think it's a little bit of both, where it's negligence on purpose because they would rather us be sick, need big pharma, need
Mm-hmm.
medications. And then also, we do have to advance as a society. So the metals they make sense in a lot of cases. Clark kind of hammers that home like, hey, you need metals. Everything that you're like working on, every pan you're cooking in, all that stuff's metals. So for convenience, we do have to have them in our environment as well.
Yes, the minerals, like you talked about, they have certain characteristics, and getting the minerals right can help. It helps man become kind of a modern man. When we say making men more manly, there's a certain type of there's older minerals, right? Like lead, cadmium. You know, there's always so you kind of think of like a cadmium man. A cadmium man is someone they'd be more like a Gen Xer nowadays, or even a boomer. They smoke cigarettes. They don't know a lot about, but they have like horse sense, right? They know like common sense. They know what's right or wrong. They know that like you shouldn't probably vote for more government and things like that. But they don't have a lot of context. They don't understand like a lot of the science and stuff like that. They're not more of a, and a lot of times they'll struggle more with like anger. A lot of them struggle more with the opposite sex because they have a harder time understanding women or relating to women. What the program could do is kind of move you into like more of the modern man, right? Which is still higher testosterone, less willing to go along with like, certain agendas, knowing what's right or wrong, but also being a little bit more in touch with the feminine. Okay, you know, understanding how to relate to women a little bit better, understanding how to communicate a little bit better, like how we're doing through social media, being able to explain the concepts, understand why things are the way they are, and how we can fix them. You know what I mean? That's a little bit more of the modern man, like more selenium, more zinc.
Yeah, I think another concept to kind of touch on here is the fact that testosterone's been demonized. You know, if you look around, they don't
Hmm.
want you eating red meat. It's kind of this like weird flip where they turn on men and males, right? Because
Hmm.
men in society have traditionally abused power, especially women, whoever they can for the greed. And I think that's actually completely the opposite of a high testosterone man. I think a high testosterone man's actually
Yeah.
much calmer, more in touch. You get better
Hmm.
sleep, you have better energy, you have better mood. With that just comes, the ability to decipher between when you should be angry and when you shouldn't. Not to say that you should never get angry, that's just part of life, but I do
Right.
think that you're calmer, you're more chill. People look at testosterone and they think about like, roid rage or something that,
Yeah.
all males have high testosterone who take advantage of other people. And I would beg to differ, because I would believe that a lot of these CEOs, high level people who are just working all the time, I guarantee you, if I did a testosterone test on them right now, it's actually extremely low. I think it would be the opposite. So testosterone gets demonized, even TRT and things like that. And I think actually, the more optimal your testosterone level is, the more level-headed you'll be, the more calm you'll be, the more you'll want to, fend for your family and your wife and your children. And it's really the opposite of what the mainstream media tries to portray it as.
Yeah, there's definitely yeah, sort of a demonization of anything masculine.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just because by its nature, masculinity is harder to control, for sure.
Yeah,
And we live in a very feminized culture.
it's
I mean,
crazy.
just go on Instagram. It's the epitome of like feminization. Is like a lot of this thing, social
Yeah, I
media.
think everything's triggering to people, which I think is also another sign of like toxicity and hormonal function. It's just you're a little bit when you remove these metals and you have more of an optimal hormone function. I think you're better able to take in all of the information that we are dealt on a daily basis, from wars overseas to things going on in the government to things going on just everywhere, a murder here, this, that. We have so much information. I think you have more of an ability to take in that information without like letting it linger, without actually, like, it seems like when your hormones are low and you have the toxicity, you ruminate on that stuff a lot more, almost like OCD, and it sticks with you within your nervous system. It's like people see a
Hmm.
Gaza strip or something getting bombed, and it's like, boom, their whole nervous system just is crippling
Yeah, yeah,
anxiety, and it just sticks with them. And they're so emotionally triggered. And I think that you actually can be more balanced with taking in information like that if you are a little bit more clear minded.
oh, 100%. Yeah, 100%. There's no doubt about that. Um,
You're able to detach, from everything that's going on. You can, and just kind of focus on making yourself better, which also leaches out to the people around you. And that's really all you have control of.
yeah, detachment is very powerful, especially in modern society. Um, modern society is very broken in a lot of ways. So what I kind of think about, and yeah, we have a lot of great technology, right? But yet, one thing that I think it's interesting to ask ourselves is who's happier. Like, let's say you're like a 22-year-old man. Who is happier, the average Native American 22-year-old man in the 1600s, just living off the land, or the average American 22-year-old? Like, who do you think had like more happiness in their lives, or were feeling more fulfilled? To me, probably the Native American, right?
Yeah, no, it's funny you bring that up, because that's actually kind of my goal with over time. I don't know, maybe like 10-year plan. I have it on my vision board already, like finding land. Like, I've been researching
Yeah.
farming and regenerative farming. That's kind of the goal for me to um, maybe take some clients, have the supplement line, and podcast and everything, keep all of that going. But I really just want to get, more mountain vibes where I can hunt, be away from technology from time to
Yeah.
time, and grow some of
Yeah.
my own food. That's kind of like my overall goal.
Yeah, physicality is definitely helps a modern man. Like a lot of modern uh, men would be helped by any sort of masculinity. Uh, would be helped by like the physicality. You ever watch Ty Lopez?
I've seen him before. I know he runs a lot of ads and he's a big social media guy, but I've never really gotten into him too much.
So one thing he talks about that helped him a lot is he lived with the Amish for like 2 years when he was like 18. He just went and lived with the Amish. It was just waking up 5 in the morning, and you just go work on the farm until it's night. You know what I mean? But the Amish, they're way happier. So like if you like study them, they have the highest levels of happiness of uh, any segment of the population, even though they're much more backward as far as technology goes.
Yeah,
Um,
what's funny is Aaron's told me that he's worked with some Amish people and they have a lot of the imbalances and stuff though, and the metals. It's just so crazy how even if you do live
yeah,
that route, you still need a program like this or some kind of detoxification modality. Just even though they're not the ones dirtying up the environment, it's still it's
yeah,
everywhere.
yeah. They're on average, of course, they're healthier. Like they have way less autism in their children, so partially because they don't give their children the injections um, and other things. But yeah, even the Amish could definitely use the program because the thing is about one thing about the program is that like even if you're healthy, you can still use the program. You know what I mean? It'll move anyone forward. You know what I mean?
That's what I think. I think just if you just look at just the soil degradation in general and
Hmm.
realize that the plants do not have the ability to even absorb the minerals that you might go on Dr. Google and say your kale or your broccoli has this and this and this, but
Hmm.
in reality it doesn't. A lot of the fruit is cut before it's ripe and then it has to be
Hmm.
transported and then ripen in the store. And so
Been
that
very
stops it. They get
hybridized.
a lot of their nutrient value right at the end on the tree, right before they ripen.
Hmm.
So it's like a lot of these
Yeah.
foods you're eating are just mineral deficient, even if you don't have a bunch of like heavy metals, which I think most people probably have at least a good amount, but you're just going to be mineral deficient in general. And for me, it makes the most sense. The minerals seem to have the most, vitality, different enzymatic functions. It's just so many things that all of them do. And it just makes the most sense to me to try to balance them all out.
Yeah. So one thing that's interesting is that I think it'll be used in the future. So you can use the same methodology to improve soil. So soil can be in four lows. You can test the NAK ratio of the soil, and then if it has a low NAK for what the soil needs, you'd give it something. You give a mineral mix similar to limcomin. So one thing that's interesting about nutritional balancing is a universal science. So you can actually use the same science on any living organism. There's an ideal NAK ratio for all living organisms. So any mammal. So you can test the hair of a dog, and you can use the same products on a dog. You can use it on the soil. Anywhere on the hierarchy, you can actually use the same methodology because it actually applies to all living systems, which is something that's fascinating.
Yeah, one thing that I actually brought up to Clark because he's big on the ionic mimicry, and I said, if the body, the human body, would rather have the mineral instead of the metal, would that also apply to like a regenerative farm where they give the cows and the animals like a mineral buffet that then
Mm-hmm.
remineralizes the soil? Then they
Mm-hmm.
rotate that and they grow plants on that soil. I'm wondering if even if the metals are there, if the plants have access to the minerals, would they just like we do, pick up the minerals instead of the metals and leave the metals in the soil? I wonder how that works. It seems like that would be the case.
Yeah, yeah, it would be the case. And in the future, I think we'll use this science to also regenerate our soils and create healthier livestock.
Yeah,
It'll
that's
be
what I mean. That's what
it'll
they're
be
doing. And I get all my meat from White Oak Pastures, which is
Mhm.
obviously more expensive. Not everyone can afford. I get it, but they give their animals a mineral buffet, and they've been doing that for like 25,
Mhm.
30 years. So when they urinate or they use the bathroom, all of those minerals that they didn't digest are remineralizing the soil, and they're moving the cattle and the chickens and everything in a way where it's not being overgrazed, everything's being remineralized, and then they also grow some plants on that, but they're mostly animal products. But if you did do something like that to regenerate soil and then start a garden or something on there, I think you would have a way more mineral dense, sweet potatoes or whatever it was that you grew.
Yeah, yeah. Or even, you could even test the best would be actually you
Mm.
can test the hair of the cows, and you'd be like, oh,
Mm.
these cattle have a low NAK ratio. They need limb coming, and you.
You know what they say with with the livestock is that they're super intelligent and intuitive with it. You just put out a mineral buffet, and they're a lot smarter than we are. They just lick each one as they need it. They don't never overdo it, and then they have way less infections,
Oh
way
yeah, for
less
sure.
need for antibiotics, anything like that. They don't need anything because they're a little bit more intuitive than we are. We've lost touch with nature quite a bit.
Yeah, yeah, and that's one thing we were going back to. Like as you develop on the program, you get more in tune with that. Like, oh, maybe I need a little more zinc. Or like you get more in touch with that definitely on the program because you can start to learn what the minerals feel like and how you're feeling and how you react to them for sure. A little more animal like in
Yeah, it
animal.
seems as if it increases intuition and spirituality. I'm already been pretty spiritual. I do a lot of yoga, and I'm into psychedelics and talk about a lot of those on my show, and done a lot of ceremonies in that realm. And
Have you done TMT?
I still haven't. I have a lady that I want to use. I've been
I
back and
haven't done
forth.
TMT.
My buddy who loves it told me not to do it without my wife. So I've been kind of waiting because she's trying to get pregnant. So she doesn't want to do that in the moment.
Yeah, yeah,
And I was like, ugh, I want to do it so bad.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I haven't done a lot. Like I've never done LSD. I've only done mushrooms a couple times. Um,
Have you ever done it ceremonially?
no, I just took some mushrooms with some friends.
Yeah,
Barely
the
grew.
the difference between like the essential oils and the
Mhm.
burning of the sage and the Palo Santo and taking a high enough dose, the music, the eye mask. It's crazy the difference between like just taking some with your friends and going to the beach and doing that.
Yeah, I think that's also you should have a shaman. Having a shaman's good. Someone that like can guide you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the setting matters, and having a person there in case you freak out is definitely crucial.
So we talked about like some. I think some men are more naturally like they're in their genetics. They're higher testosterone, more athletic, more alpha. Like you'd see those type of men more in the military, for example. There's also a certain genetic component
Mm.
that I can kind of tell in people sometimes, where some people are more geared towards being like, if you were in a tribe, right? Like you'd be more likely to be the warrior. Some men would be more likely to be the shaman because they just
Yeah,
have that.
I
They
have
just have that gift.
a lot of warrior style instincts.
Yeah, 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 for sure.
100%.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a genetic component to it. Yeah, I think it's good in those type of ceremonies to have a shaman type person that can, especially if you're doing like a big dose of something like DMT or something, to someone that's
Yeah, I
there
would.
to like help guide your spirit through whatever it's doing.
I've done
All
the
right, come back,
mushrooms
come back.
I've done the mushrooms on my own quite a bit after playing around with them for a while, but I would never do
Okay.
ayahuasca or DMT without. I've never done either of those still. I've just done high
Uh-huh.
doses of LSD and mushrooms, and
Yeah.
I've microdosed ibogaine, and I've done bigger doses of Amanita muscaria. But if I
Mascaria.
ever
What
did
is that's
ayahuasca,
mascaria? That's the mushroom.
that's actually a legal psychedelic. I did an entire show on it with a guy who forages them.
Uh-huh.
They're technically not illegal because the Amanita is the Super Mario Brother mushroom, the red and white one.
Okay.
And you can
Yeah.
just go forage those. They're not illegal because they don't contain psilocybin, and technically the government thinks they're toxic because if you do just pick them and eat them, there is a toxic compound in them, but you can
Mhm.
boil that out as a tea and you can take that as a microdose. Amazing. One of the best things you could ever take, like as a microdose before bed, Amanita.
Mhm.
I have a show with this guy called the Amanita Warrior. It's Laughing Dragon. He changed his name to, but
Mhm.
it's super legal. You can just order it from his website. He makes tinctures so that you don't have to boil it out and make a tea either. He's already gotten rid of the toxic compound, or you can just buy the mushrooms straight from him and do the tea. So I've played around with that, but if I ever did ayahuasca, which I will, and or DMT, I will definitely be with a guide, like a really trained guide.
So you did high dose LSD. What was that like?
Super fun. Went into the Dali Museum. I've never done LSD as like a ceremonial thing, but
Hmm.
I've done it at festivals. Obviously, you're just like listening to music, you're in the vibe. But
Yeah.
I went to the Dali Museum on 200 micrograms of LSD, which is 2 hits. And I don't know if you guys know Salvatore Dali, but I'm pretty sure he painted everything he ever painted on psychedelics.
Yeah.
And if you take the psychedelics and go experience, we have a Dali Museum here in St. Pete, like 30 minutes away.
Uh-huh.
And then went to the beach and just had the most amazing day with a couple buddies. It was actually fantastic. Because I've been to the Dali Museum sober, and then I
Yeah.
went back on a bunch of LSD, and it was amazing.
Yeah, I'm too scared to do LSD because I've seen it affect too many people permanently. Like I had a buddy, he did like I don't know what really happened. He just did like LSD every day for like a week.
Well,
I
that's
don't know what
crazy.
the dosage he did. I don't know how much he did, but like he never like was the same. That like terrified me. I was
Yeah,
like, fuck, like I don't want
I
that.
I actually think microdosing LSD is one of the most potent nootropics for creativity, for better mood, for critical
Mhm.
thinking. It's one of my favorite things. I've been doing that. I mean, once, twice a week. Sometimes I take a break here and there for probably
Oh, so
six,
you're
7 years.
microdosing LSD twice a week?
Yes, I still do.
That's
Probably at least once,
fascinating.
at least once a week. I do it still.
Where do you get it? Like, oh, should we
You got
be
to figure
telling?
that out.
I'll be asking you.
Consult with your neighborhood guy who you might know. You can get some of these like
Matt, can you take
LSA.
them after the show? I'm just kidding.
Nope, I don't supply anything or know where anybody can get anything illegal. Um, but you can find some of these other compounds like LSA. I've heard.
Mhm.
I don't know a website or anything, but those aren't scheduled, and I guess they're similar.
Yeah.
And you can get those online if you look them up. I think because they're like one. They'll manipulate one molecule, and then it'll technically be legal because it's not scheduled. So I think like LSA is you can find online, but I don't know exactly where.
That's fascinating. So you microdose like once or twice a week just for the only thing that I really microdose once in a while at this time is I'll do a little bit of marijuana edible.
Yeah, I gave up smoking. I used to smoke so much, obviously, when I was partying and I was growing it. I mean, when you're growing it, you
Yeah.
just have it laying around everywhere. And it started
Yeah,
to give me
right.
anxiety after a while. I think just because, I don't know if it was the cadmium or whatever it was, I started to have like negative effects, just smoked too
Hmm.
much for too long. And now I just only do this really pure CBD. But I have a buddy who does do some biodynamic uh, marijuana THC style with the right ratios of CBD to THC. And he's back
Hmm.
home in Michigan. So I think when I'm back up there one time, I do want to try something that's more biodynamically, like regeneratively grown, but also it's like the ancient strains where they're not trying to just maximize the THC to, there's really the old school strains had a good balance of the cannabinoids. And we've just kind of turned marijuana into like another street drug almost.
Yeah, it's one thing that people don't realize is that marijuana is much stronger than it used to be. Um, yeah, it's a much different experience than like if you just like smoked a little, like if you smoked like a joint in the '70s at a concert or something. You know what I mean? Nowadays,
Yeah, it's
it's been
unreal.
hybridized. It's been very, very hybridized to be much, much more potent. And then not only
Hmm.
are the strains more potent, but the way people smoke it nowadays is like they use like the hash oil or what do they call it, dabs.
Yeah, I did a lot of dabs when I was growing.
Yeah, yeah, that's like at that point it's basically a hard drug. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
and I was in the early days, so a lot of that shit had butane in it, and I was just probably killed. I
Yeah,
don't even know how
yeah.
many brain cells I lost to butane infused hash oil, but probably too many.
Right, right. And so yeah, it's a much more dangerous drug I think than people realize in the modern era. Um, like you said, like you were talking about how they're trying to weaken it. I mean, there's a reason why they've legalized marijuana, and there's a reason why it's become such a mainstay of our culture, especially like here in California, where it's legal.
Yeah, yeah,
Here
for
it's
sure.
like yeah, it's very very accepted where I live.
I mean, it's kind of accepted everywhere now. I mean, I was in Michigan; they were one of the first states to legalize as well, so it was just like booming.
Hmm.
I had a dispensary for a bit. That was cool. Was selling out of there. It was like the Wild Wild West days. But it's just we're definitely over consuming it. As a person who used to say weed's harmless and this and that, I definitely do think like coming full circle that it can have some negative effects on your brain, on your hormone function, just on your overall productivity. I think people are using it to mask a lot of these symptoms that we're kind of getting back to with the mineral balancing. You know, a lot of people have the brain fog, they have the fatigue, they have the anxiety. So that's just another crutch for them because they don't feel good just, you know, on a day-to-day basis. And that's really what we're trying to hammer with people on the mineral balancing stuff.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize that marijuana is basically a stimulant.
Yeah.
A lot of people smoke pot because they're tired and they're copper toxic. And it helps
Yeah.
drive the copper back into the tissues, and it like when you smoke pot, you know, it increases your heart rate, and it's basically like a stimulant.
Yeah, I think at least for sure with the stuff that we smoke nowadays, you know, that's why I really want to try, like, you know, smoking a little bit of that like ancient cannabis strand that has a higher CBD content. Because I know if you do take like a little bit of CBD oil when you do smoke some of these stronger strains, you'll have a more like you won't be as high and it'll be more mellow, like you'll be chill. And I've tried that before. Or if you get too high, you can actually like roll up a spliff of just CBD and it'll actually bring you back down. So I think the reason that it's more of a stimulant is the cannabinoid ratio for sure.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the supplements. So you and Aaron have kind of partnered up. Looks like you've what's it called, valence minerals or something?
Yeah. So it's interesting. I've been obsessed with supplements for a long time. And I, you know, through my healing journey, I've spent $1,000 a month on supplements, trying everything from Shilajit to different forms of things to, I mean, suppositories, you name it. I've done it. And, you know, I'm in the biohacking world. You know, I go to the biohacking conference. I listen to a lot of these people, and they are really, you know, with the information that's out nowadays, people know their stuff. You know, they know the different forms. They know, not, you know, the mineral carriers are a little bit more nuanced. That's more like if you're really in the weeds, like, you know, Aaron or myself, and I'm not even in the weeds as much as him, but, you know, if you're really into it, you'll know about orotate versus picolinate. That's like a whole nother thing. But a lot of people do know things like active bees. You know, they get a genetic testing from somebody, or, you know, they say they do better on this, or they know that they know things about their methylation through genetic testing, whether you believe in that or not. It's just, you know, their information is there and they've learned that through a practitioner somewhere. And then they also, you know, they listen to podcasts now. The information's everywhere. And, you know that they may not feel that well when they take things like fillers like magnesium stearate, or, you know, any of these other like fillers that people use instead of using something like, you know, leucine, which I like, you know, is a good amino acid, or like bamboo silica, which also has some good benefits that most people are going to react really well to, instead of having different like coatings and different things that you see in the Endomet line. And luckily, I almost was pretty off put by this program. Luckily, something within my soul just told me to run with the program, even though when I got the supplements and looked them up, I was like, I don't really like the forms of like any of this stuff. Like, you know, I told my wife, like, this stuff's like outdated. Like I could really reformulate a lot, like super easy too, not that deep into it. You know, Aaron's really went deep, and we've developed some crazy good products that I think are going to do really well. But, you know, just simple things like better forms of B1, better forms of B6, you know, just like little simple things that I thought should have been updated. But I was just so sick and wanted to heal that I just tried it, just did it, even though it had the, you know, the fillers in there that I didn't like, you know, everything that it had in there that I was kind of against. I just, you know, was talking to people who had such good results, and I was just really wanted to see if I could heal from. I really thought that I had a lot of heavy metals, and I did. And but then once Aaron started sending me some formulations, I was really interested, and I couldn't wait to maybe dip into fast oxidation to try the NAK up, because I was like, this looks way better than Limcomin. And even the first NAK up, I was like, man, you didn't want to use like copper bisglycinate, you know, you didn't want to, you know, switch up the magnesiums. And he was just like, I think it'll be fine. And it was. But then now this 2.0 version, I think, is really going to be a home run with the NAK up. It's a little bit better forms of magnesium, a little bit better forms of zinc. And then also, obviously, the active B6 that's in there. And what really, to me, because I like to be around in these biohacking spheres, like I said, and they're really, really not going to be interested in products that have the fillers and have the inactive forms of things. And for me, to present that to anyone that I'm kind of in the circles with who really knows all of the all of that type of information was going to be a little bit challenging. And so once he started sending me formulations and I just kind of would put my 2 cents in here and there about what I thought should be in there or switch or if it looked good, I just really got obsessed. And then as I was getting better results with the product, with these, what I call inferior products, the Endomets, they do the job, but they could be a lot better. And so I just really got was like, I'm going to do this. I invested. I told them I'd help ship. And so now we have 3 products on the way specifically for mineral balancing. And then we are going to do the recharge as well, which he already sold some of, which people can take if they're on mineral balancing, but that's more of like a nitric oxide boosting, like energy type supplement. And yeah, I just think Endomet had a lot of issues. And, there's even more we can dive into if you want to about what I think are issues with that.
Yeah, I'll let you know a little bit of background for me with the supplements. So I discovered Aaron through Lewis, partially because me and Lewis have been in business together for quite some time. With Life Labs, we rebranded, and then I was just getting more used to Instagram because I've just trying to market the brand and stuff like that with what we're building. And I've known for some time that as we move forward, we're going to need different supplements. So I don't know if you know much about Endomit or Dr. Eck or the history of like ARL and everything, but Dr. Eck was brilliant, right? And most of the stuff from ARL and Endomit actually just exists from Eck, who invented it in like the 70s and 80s. And now his kids run it. And I think they understand like what their father created, but it's not like the same project it used to be. Like the supplements and their processes haven't been updated probably in like at least 30 years. You know what I mean? A lot of them. Yeah, I can tell. And like you talked about, we get good results with them. Obviously we get good results with them, and they're a good company. They're always, they have good customer service and everything. And the supplements they're good quality for what they are. You know what I mean? There's no like, you can trust that there's no like they're pure. You know what I mean? And obviously we get good results, but me and Lewis especially have known for some time that they need to be updated. Obviously, just something simple like the activated B vitamins, right?
Simple.
Yeah, they've gotten quite behind because since Dr. X passed, we've had 30, 40 years of advancement in mineral science. There's been lots of studies on things like, methylation and these different forms of vitamins. So we've known for some time that the formulas need to be redone. And that was kind of like when I discovered Aaron is beautiful because it was the next kind of logical step with what we're kind of building. Because eventually I would like to just use these formulations.
Yeah, I think we're going to try to keep dropping a couple a year if we can, as long as the one cell that we do have and we can use the profits to just reinvest. I mean, that's the goal. There's a few simple things. One thing that I didn't like as well was just like basic like amino acid chelate. Like, as far as transparency goes, as a client, for one, I don't want to answer all of their questions about what form everything is if they are a little bit informed, or tell them that they should just call the lab. It seems logical from a transparency, aspect that if they are taking something, if they're super clean with their diet, like we're trying to get them to do with their water, with their air, they also should know every ingredient that they're putting in their body. So that needs to be labeled. Yeah. It doesn't need to be up for question, or it just needs to be simply stated right here. This is what it is. And then you can Google that and see if that's something that, you would like to put in your body. You don't need to call the lab.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. Within like 5 minutes of talking to Aaron, I knew this is the guy that I was looking for. Like I talked about, I'm a little more like me and Lewis, especially. We're a little bit more intuitive, sort of like how we like. I don't know nearly as much about minerals as Aaron, but like 10 minutes into his like, we probably talked for like 2 hours on the phone. He told me so much about, he went full autistic on.
Yeah,
about all the carriers, all the and it's beautiful. It's amazing because we need someone like that. That's what we need. We need someone like that loves and cares about the formulations and understands it at that sort of level, and it's his passion. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I knew within a few minutes of talking to him, I was like, this is the guy. This is the guy.
100%. His formulations are great. You know, I put my little 2 cents in on things I think we may add, but as far as like the ratios and the absorption rates and things like that, he's definitely the guy for that. And you know, that's why I was down to help, because I've gotten such great results with the program. I feel like with an update, we could help a lot more people, and it
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't be as off-putting to some of these people who are, like I said, like in the biohacking realm, or really, really conscious about what they put in their body. And on that note, you know, I'm not 100% sure, but I think that Endomet even uses really low quality like organs, like feedlot style, or, you know, really
Mm-hmm.
cheap, you know, organ supplements. And a lot of people would be happier if that was like a
Mm-hmm.
regenerative or a grass fed, like New Zealand style organ,
Mm-hmm.
just based off of
Right.
not giving if you're trying to be this like healthy, conscious person, you're eating grass fed meat all the time. Why do you want to ingest like a feedlot organ that's giving into like, you know, the factory farms and shit like that? So that's another thing that could be a simple change. And I don't even think that that would be necessarily expensive to just go from feedlot organs to like a New Zealand organ. I think you could probably still get that from a manufacturer that's pretty clean, pretty cheap, and just that could be updated. You know, things are not as difficult really. That you know, it's not going to be that hard. It's just actually costs a lot of
Yeah.
money and a lot of
Right.
investment, and you're taking a
Right.
risk, because
Right.
when people are getting results on a program, then they might not want to switch. They're like, I'm fine on Limcomet, you know, and that's where
Mm-hmm.
you got Aaron's really good at, you know, posting daily basically about the different forms and why you should want those, and he's great at that.
Yeah.
And there's just little things like that that can be done, and that would make it more appealing to the new age people who do have access to all kinds of podcasts and books and things like that.
No, my plan is to eventually just completely switch to these formulations, especially once we
Mm-hmm.
have all the basic ones in place. Which you guys already have a lot of them. You have the zinc, the NACAP. You have a Mega Pan. Those are the three. The Mega Pan
Yeah.
replacement.
So we have the updated zinc, which I've, for one, have never taken Endomet zinc.
Mm-hmm.
Just never even did it. Took picolinate,
Yeah.
took orotate, you know, so never
Mm-hmm.
even have even, especially because I work with Aaron and he's a little bit more like
Yeah.
doesn't even care about the affiliate money. He just wants to move the needle on the program. He's like, just take picolinate or just take orotate.
Yeah.
So, and that was already kind of the forms that I actually didn't know much about picolinate as much until I talked to him, but I would have
Mm-hmm.
probably taken something like orotate instead of the one that Endomet sells. But the other formulations are more difficult, because if
Yeah.
you didn't want to take Megapan, but you wanted to do the genius of Dr. Pollack's ratios, like you would
Yeah.
basically have to make something, you're like buy a bunch of powders or something. I don't even know how you wouldn't, it's almost
Yeah.
impossible to get the
Right.
ratios right and try to
Yeah.
redo it, you know. It's nearly impossible. So I just took that, just because you can't really recreate that. But
Mm-hmm.
you know, we can recreate it if we drop our own supplement line, and
Yeah.
they are more expensive. So I think there could be still a lot of room for Endomet for people who are on a budget, and they just
Mm-hmm.
really like those. You can get those pretty cheap if your practitioner offers you a decent discount or anything. But what we're seeing as well, at least with NAK up, is it seems like it skyrockets the ratio like dramatically. It did for me, it did for a few other people. So there is potential that with the more bioavailability of the forms, the better forms, where it is more expensive, but then we're going to need a lot of data from practitioners, but it seems like we could probably drop the dose. So it's
Mm-hmm.
more expensive to buy it up front, but then if you're taking less of a dose, then
Right.
maybe that'll kind of equal out somewhere. And then as we get bigger orders, you know, you'll get the product cheaper, maybe. Just, I don't really know. It's still in the beginning phases of us just getting the like smallest order that makes sense, or the biggest order that makes sense. But, you know, Endomet's probably making like $1 million orders. So they're getting everything like super dirt cheap.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah. I want to definitely keep. I want to definitely work with you guys for sure and have. I mean, it's good you already have the basics. One thing that we could really use is a four lows one.
So we think the upgraded Paramin that we're going to drop next, as Paramin's another one that I think is strongly could use an update, like better forms of
For sure.
magnesium and calcium in there,
Mm-hmm.
especially like a little K2 for the calcium in there. I think we're going to add a little bit of taurine and a really absorbable form that Aaron really loves of boron, the fructoborate. which I have never tried, but he seems to think that that's probably the most powerful form of boron. That's going to come out next, hopefully relatively soon next year at some point. Just trying to see what the sales look like on these first ones that we get done.
I look forward to that one.
And he thinks with the taurine in there and the more absorbable forms of the calcium and magnesium, he thinks that that's actually what's going to move the needle for people in 4 lows a lot quicker.
That's very exciting for me. I talked about it with Aaron. 4 lows is a very common pattern nowadays, and it's one of the cornerstones of Dr. X's work. Right? No other system that I know of even recognizes something like 4 lows.
Wow.
You know, so there's some other like mineral systems. Especially if you go back and like study some of the older like people that even Dr. X learned from. People that kind of started to realize that human beings and like or systems were kind of into fast or slow oxidation, but nothing else that I know of or anyone else since or before has really discovered the 4 lows pattern and discovered it as there's slow and fast oxidation, but there seems to be a separate metabolic pattern that human beings can get stuck in, the 4 lows. And, children nowadays, I get tests from children in 4 lows all the time.
Sad.
What I told Aaron is like we're kind of becoming the 4 lows society, and so anything.
Let me ask you: is 4 lows like the most extreme burnout, like the hardest pattern to come out of it? From talking to Aaron, it sounds like it, but I'm still kind of learning all the patterns and everything. Is that like the toughest one?
Yeah, so like the toughest would be like a deep 4 lows where they're all 4 are very low with a very low NAK ratio.
Makes sense. Because you don't even have like mineral levels, and then the ratios are really skewed there, is what it seems like to me. Because if you at least have the levels a little bit higher, but the ratios are all off, you probably have a little bit more vitality than someone who just has like super low levels of minerals and the ratios are off.
Right, and so anything if we can, anything that we can do to help get people out of 4 lows is will be a huge benefit. That's why I look forward to the new. It'll just have taurine in it, no lysine.
Yeah. No. Okay. I would have to double check on that. We haven't even placed the order for it. It was super expensive. We're actually thinking of potentially dropping. We actually just had this conversation like yesterday, or the day before, so we don't know. But we think that we could technically drop the dosage to make it a little bit more affordable because of the absorption rate. People don't need the exact milligrams that are in Pyramid. We could probably drop it down, but keep the ratios, what Dr. Pollack likes the ratios to be between calcium and magnesium and things like that. So we could have a little bit less on the milligrams to make it a little bit cheaper for people and for us on the back end, just to be able to make the order. And then that also gives people the opportunity to start at a lower dose and then maybe increase if they want to. So that's like a new thing that we're thinking, because we're seeing simply with the NAK up that how effective it is, that maybe we can drop the dose on that, or just take it less times a day. So we may play around with actually doing the dosage a little bit less, just so it's a little bit more affordable.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense for sure, that you would need a little bit less of it. And you can, and think about it is, even if you make it lower dosage, you can always increase the dosage by taking more.
Right. That was we just had the talk like yesterday, and that might be the move to move forward, just so it's not expensive for the clients, and so we can actually make an order.
Yeah, it's easier to take more than less, right? It's easier to take 2 than cut it in half.
Yeah. And I think these are going to be more capsules, which I don't know if people care because they're already taking like 7 supplements, but instead of taking like 1 megapan, I think the Slow Ox might be like 2 capsules. So it's going to be a little bit more, but I think people will still be cool with that by knowing that it's more of an advanced formula, and potentially we can drop the dosage down depending on the chart, and if it looks like it's moving a lot quicker, or just it's going to take a lot of data. That's the other thing. We're going to need practitioners on board and getting data back from clients to know whether or not we can maybe take a little bit. Maybe you need 6 limcomin a day, but you only need 4 NAK or something like that. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's very exciting for me, because it's kind of what we're doing too, is like we want to move this science forward into like we talk about like not only the supplements, but a lot of the systems of ARL haven't really changed in like 30 or 40 years. So I would like the reformulations to be like part of the stack that we're building. So I don't know if you're very familiar with like the apps that Lewis has built.
Yeah, I
One
get
of
all
them,
of those back from Aaron, obviously, and I think it's incredible. And I can't wait to use it when I get done with Susan's course as a practitioner for sure.
right? So, and then the next part that we're building, we've been working on the last month is basically just for practitioners for managing clients.
Yeah.
So it's a play.
I asked him about that, and he said he's still working on it, but hopefully
Yeah,
it's done by the time I get done with my course.
yeah. So it'll be like a place where you'll have like a similar to like a spreadsheet with you can have all your clients, all their contact information. It can tell you when they last ordered, when they last ordered supplements, when the next retest is. It'll have scheduling. Um, Lately, we've been working on so that people can interact with it offline as much as possible. One thing we realized like quite quickly is that people don't want another app to log into. You know what I mean? Like, people already have their Instagram and their Facebook or whatever. Like they don't want another app for their hair mineral analysis that they have to remember the login and then they have to log into there to like send their practitioner questions. And so what we've been
Right.
working on the last couple weeks is just getting it to so like basically clients can interact with it as much as possible where they don't have to log in. Like when they send an email, it'll send you as a practitioner just a private message or something like that. We're still kind of, it's kind of a little bit of trial and error, but just getting to the point where, yeah, they don't even need to, they only need to log in basically if they want to see like their past results or like their program sheets or like any sort of like informational thing like that. But to like ask questions and to like interact with their practitioner, they don't need to see that side of it. It's mostly for the practitioner just to organize everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Right.
that seems like I was already thinking about like how when you have 200 clients, you keep everything in different files and everything. Like the app would be amazing for that. It would be
Yeah.
crazy
Yeah.
if you could even like record like your consultations with people and then just have those stored in like the same file, so like they can just pull up their past consultation if they have any questions. Like
Yep.
that would even be amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no limit. So like one thing we did recently is we forked Chat GBT and we fed it all the information of we fed it like Dr. Wilson's book, and we fed it Dr. Wilson's website. We fed it some other stuff, um, and so that's one thing. Like you can integrate AI with a practitioner too, where like imagine you have a little AI thing, and then you feed it all the information from your clients, and then it gets trained to recognize certain detox symptoms and stuff. You know what I mean? And like it can help suggest things, right? Oh, your client's been in four lows for 3 years or whatever, and like their symptoms shifted. Maybe you should try this or whatever it may be. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was picturing like how I had that question earlier about is this a detox symptom or we need a retest? I feel like
Yeah.
there's probably a simple questionnaire that they could fill out and
Yes,
it
exactly.
would probably spit it back out to them, say, hey, get a retest, or hey, this is just a
Yeah.
detox reaction, maybe back off the supplements. Like that would be great because it would be like less time consuming for you as the practitioner to like email everyone back every time they have a detox reaction. So if they can interface with something like that, it'd be incredible.
Yeah, yeah, and then the reformulation of the supplements is something that we want to be part of that. And then in the coming year, maybe probably will be at least another year before I start the process. But we officially want to do our own lab as well, and then everything will be integrated with the lab. And so anyone that uses the lab, any client, they get their own client portal. Every practitioner that uses the lab, they get the practitioner app, and it's all vertically integrated. Does that make sense? And every practitioner gets
100%.
trained. Every practitioner gets trained to use the app.
Right. So
Yeah.
you just get the app report from everybody. And once I mean, even as a person, maybe normal, people who are clients don't want to read all that information when they get it. But I love getting that like report back from Aaron when I get the
Yeah.
Lewis's hair analysis one. And it's just got like, you can just keep reading and reading all about like everything that's
Yeah.
going on. You're like, yeah, this makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, yeah. We want to. So, what we'll end up doing is like it'll be like options for the practitioner because you're right. So a lot of practitioners they don't want that much information, and so they'll just within their app they'll just be able to toggle it. Does it? They
Oh,
want to keep
okay.
it simpler. The practitioner, a lot of them want their own branding and stuff too. So a lot of it is like if the practitioner wants their own branding and stuff. You know what I mean? Probably what we'll end up doing is like if you can just have the standard report from the lab like Indomit does now. You ever gotten one of those reports from Indomit? You ever seen those?
Yeah.
Where they mail
Aaron was
them?
just sending me that the first couple tests. I've gotten a
Yeah,
lot
yeah,
of tests than the
Yeah.
normal person for 9 months. I do mine like every month and a half to 2 months, because for
Yeah.
me, that, especially at least in the beginning, maybe when I balance out a little bit more, I'll wait a little bit longer, but I've shifted dramatically so much every 2 months where for me, it's just made the most sense. It has been a little bit harder because every time you change the supplement regimen, you get back into like some detox reactions. So you have to be
Yeah.
a little bit more warrior minded, I guess, and just know that that's going to happen every single time.
Right.
But I've just,
Right.
for me, I would rather just do that and try to speed the process up.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. So yeah, we'll probably do something like Endomed does, where we have like the basic report that most people get, and then if a practitioner wants a different like branding, or they want to set up a little bit different, we'll just do that, because a lot of practitioners, they want their own, especially when they're on social media and stuff, they want their own branding. They want their own vibe. Like
Yeah, yeah, for
Clark, for
sure.
example. Like Clark's always going to want his reports to look like nutritional analytics, colors, and
Mm-hmm.
like it's from Clark. You know what I mean? Even even
100%.
though even if a practitioner ends up using the same back end, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where we're going, and yeah, eventually I would want the automated reports just to be the reformulations of these better supplements. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Because I feel like this is what's been really needed. Is just taking. It's a great science, but no one really not many people know about it. So that's one thing. Is like I think a lot of the younger guys nowadays, like you and Aaron and Clark, some of the younger blood are really doing a good job with that. Just getting it out there. Like Chris, it's like you can't find. There's no social media from ARL
Right.
or like Endomid. Like you can't. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I just kind of already had my podcast going, right? And
Mhm.
then started doing this program and just got such crazy results where I'm like, I'm going to give everybody who I feel like is doing this program justice, the Clarks,
Mhm.
the Aarons, Lewis, whatever, maybe you'll come on one day, whoever, Susan, whoever's doing it in a way that I think's right, because that's a lot of the issue as well. You come across people who, I'm not going to say everyone's doing it wrong or not getting results, but they're not really doing it like mineral nutritional balancing way like Dr.
Mhm.
Paul Eck intended. And maybe they feel a little bit better from that, but you talk to some of them practitioners sometimes and they're not really even seeing much heavy metal dumps, which is, like
Mhm.
what's the, not to say that you can't fix some deficiencies through, replacement theory and just looking at levels, but it doesn't get the same results. And what I'm looking for is, that heavy metal removal as much as possible.
Mhm.
I think that that's really where your brain opens up, where you get your energy back, where you get your sleep back, you get, way less brain fog and ADHD and all of that. So I really want to promote, the detoxification part of it, which I know is tough and people don't want to deal with that always, but that's really the way forward.
Yeah, and it's really about just making happy, healthier people, right? And we want, especially like we're talking about everyone being in four lows. Like we live in a burnt out society, and a lot of society's modern like miscontents just come from people don't feel good. So we have a lot of technology, right? We can watch Netflix all day and stuff, but people in general, there's a reason why antidepressant usage is off the charts. People aren't happy. People don't feel good. People are malcontent in today's world, and that's really what we're after. We just want to help people feel better, enjoy. You want a quality of life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You want to feel good most of the time. You want to be able to spend time with your grandchildren when you're older. You want to not feel it. You want to be able to sleep well, not feel anxious all the time. You want to feel like you have purpose in life and you have enough energy to deal with your problems. Um, and it's
Yeah. It's been remarkable for me. And I just kind of just fell into the right place at the right time I knew that it needed an update, and was just going to
Mhm.
do it anyway. I just did it anyways and was just going to do it forever. And then once Aaron started sending me these formulations, I was like, this is where the protocol needs to be. And then I started seeing the app reports and then talking with you guys. And I'm like, as a collective, we could actually turn this into something that could be great and could bring this protocol
Mhm.
into the 21st century.
Yeah, and once you begin to understand it, you realize that this is the future of health.
I think
Someday,
so.
we're gonna look back on what we're doing nowadays and be like, what were they doing? You know what I
I
mean? Like,
really believe that if you don't remove the heavy metals and get to the root of the mineral imbalances moving forward with
Mhm.
the added amount of toxicity, with the cranking up of the electromagnetic frequencies. Just posted a video on my Instagram, I think it was yesterday, in my stories about like the heavy metals are going to become increasingly more of a problem as they crank up frequencies. And they have
Yes.
no plan
Yeah.
on stopping at 5G. If they
Yeah.
could do 20G right now, they would do it. So
Yeah.
if the more metals you have in your brain, you're going to feel like you're getting fried in a microwave or like something
Mhm.
crazy, like, so you have to be able to combat that. And I use other EMF blocking frequencies and devices within my home and things like that. But I do think like when you're just out and about, if like I live in Tampa, there's a tower every 2 seconds, and if you have all them heavy metals, it's not going to be good because they definitely make you more of an antenna.
Yeah. Yeah. Part of the solution is I think you want to avoid most cities nowadays. Unfortunately, it is just healthier to live rurally. I think in the modern era, to a certain extent. I'm not saying you need to go live in a cabin in the woods. Obviously, like
I'm trying to go to mountain vibes where I can hunt and
yeah,
and I can grow some food. But
yeah,
for now, the city's great. There's a lot of paying clients. We host retreats around here, my wife and I,
beautiful.
and the post office is close. I'm about to be shipping supplements, so until we get fulfillment over time. So I mean,
Yeah.
it's not all bad. A lot of connections are
Oh
here,
yeah, for sure.
communities here. So if you're in the right city, at least I had to move across the country
Yeah,
to get out of Flint, Michigan, and be around some more business oriented and health minded type of
mhm.
people. So sometimes you got to move, but there's good aspects to it, especially you can make a lot of connections in community and stuff like that, and
Oh
hang
for
out with
sure.
people. So there's a lot
Mhm.
of good qualities to it. But as far as toxicity, like,
Yeah,
what I'm breathing in on a daily basis, things like that, it's rough. The EMFs, it's definitely, you have to even be more particular with your diet and your health because you are breathing in so many toxic fumes, and there's just way more of the frequencies and just the hustle and bustle and the noise. Think about if you're just like when you go travel to the mountains, there's like you can't even hear a sound for like miles. I got railroad tracks going by, I got cars laying on the horn,
yeah,
so there's that's a
yeah,
lot for the nervous system. So I do
yeah,
want to later in life to be able to buy, even if it's nothing crazy, but just have some cattle out there, maybe some chickens, grow a few plants, and be able to hunt and just chill. You can get Starlink nowadays. You'll be good.
yeah. I would hope that we kind of start going the opposite direction with 5G proliferation and stuff like that. It's awful.
I don't think they have any plan on stopping. I really don't.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, it seems like they're not. I think that there's just going to be more decentralization. I think people are just there's going to be more and more people that just move away into smaller communities and stuff. I think that's just how it's going to be in America. You know.
I think 2020 kind of shifted that already. You see the numbers in like parents not trying to take the injections. Parents had to homeschool for a while, then they realized, hey, we can homeschool, so they didn't send their kids back to public school. So I think that the whole idea of 2020 was a major backfire, and it was actually the Great Awakening, in my opinion. Although a lot of
I
people were
agree.
compliant, they
I,
actually, you can, if you talk to a lot of people who were all about it, who were masked up, who were all about it, like you can stay at home, if you talk to them now, a lot of them were like, wow, we fell for it. You know what I mean? Like they actually, I was never one. I was doing my research. I'm like, this shit sounds crazy. But
yeah.
I was like, so I wasn't into it, but I'm more of I got a conspiratorial mind, I don't let it control me, but I definitely like to do research on shit. But yeah, I think a lot of people woke up in that time period, and it doesn't look that way if you just watch the media, because a small conglomerate of people get a really big voice if you just watch the news. Same thing with like vegan. It's
Mhm.
really a couple percent of the population maybe are vegans, but they get a
Yeah.
really loud voice in the media, and so it
Right.
looks like there's way more of them than there actually is, and there's really not. Most people are just walking around eating meat.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I think there's actually like a quiet kind of American revolution happening right now.
I say it all the time. It looks uglier before it gets better. That's why it's looking ugly right
Yeah.
now, because the people in power do realize that there is an awakening. So
Hmm.
they're doubling down, right? They double down on how they make money, wars, propaganda, all of the things are ramping up because they see it. You can see it in Congress. You can see it from the libertarians. You can see it a lot of people on the left leaning very right, or at least middle right, at least like a JFK type of guy. You see it slowly crumbling. So people don't realize when power structures get overthrown like that, from the health institutes, the pharma, the government, they're going to try to power grab whatever they can if they see that coming. And so it's going to get a lot uglier before it gets better. It's not just like a revolution is ugly. It doesn't just look, it's not all roses. You know, when we broke off in 1776 from, you know, the EU, that was ugly. It was an all out war to make America, right? That was what people will call like a revolution. That shit was ugly if you study it. You know, a lot of people died in the big time wars. You know, they barely pulled it off. It was ugly, and then it became like this beautiful country that some people say the best country that ever existed. And I think it is. We've just lost our way quite a bit, but we're coming back around full circle.
No, I think we are. But yeah, one thing I think people have to realize though is America as it is has to change. You can just do the math, right? The debt cannot be repaid. It's as simple as that. 1 + 1 doesn't equal 3. So if you understand that the debt cannot be repaid, so then what? Well, then America, you know, and people talk about, especially notice in the older generations, they'll talk about like the Constitution and stuff like that. You should understand the Constitution, but you have to realize that the Constitution at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter that much anymore. I'm not saying it shouldn't, right? But at the end of the day, society has to agree upon something. The Constitution is the Constitution because a group of people of society agreed upon that was the law, right? If society doesn't think that's the law anymore, then it doesn't matter that it's null, right? And so it just is what it is. And so I think a lot of people get a little bit too attached to the idea of what America used to be and realize that it's going to have to change. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if America broke apart. I'm not saying there'll be like I don't think there'll be a huge civil war, because that doesn't really exist like it did before. So there used to be like there was a dividing line. There's all these people in the north, all the people in the south, right? And like the conditions for a civil war existed. This is going to be what's happening now. Is it's more scattered. You know what I mean? There's different regions more that just want more autonomy. It's more rural versus city. It's more people just are leaving the system. You know, I've seen it in my generation with my friend group a lot. People are like my generation, they're having home births. You know, they're not going to the hospital for their births. They're homeschooling their children. They're 3D printing stuff. It's amazing what you can 3D print now. You can get these metal for like $3,000. You can get a metal 3D printer. So you can like 3D print springs and stuff. So like if a part breaks in your truck, you can 3D print a new spring. It's incredible.
Yeah.
So I think that there's just kind of a decentralization of America happening. And I think a new culture is starting to rise up, and it's going to be it'll be chaotic at times because, like I said, the federal government is bankrupt. It can't go on. And so what that looks like once everyone starts to realize that the government's bankrupt, and we're kind of seeing it now in the bond market, but you know, the people are realizing that the bonds are worthless, right? Because if the government can't repay its debt, then the bond you hold is worthless because there's no way they can pay you back without inflating the currency. And
yeah,
so I think we're kind of in that end game.
Oh, we're super close. It's super bizarre. You know, a lot of you know, speaking of the Constitution, a lot of the Constitution hasn't really been upheld as far as like challenging monopolies and
we haven't followed the Constitution for 100 years, you know.
Yeah, but it's circling back around. The only thing we've really upheld is somewhat of a freedom of speech, which they really tried to take a lot of that away online, at least, and they, you know, or they shadow ban you or whatever. And then people won't give up their guns, so they knew that they could never take away all the guns. I mean, I'm gonna live in Florida. Everyone's got like 10 guns. So it's like you basically can't do that. You can try, but you can't really do that. So that was another reason why that is still in place. But a lot of the things, you know, as far as in the Constitution, they haven't been upheld because our DOJ and our government's been a little bit corrupted by people who throw money around, you know. So if you have enough money to throw around at presidential candidates on both sides, you know, they play both sides. They don't care if they'll throw money to the Democratic Party and the Republican Party so that no matter who wins, they're still in favor. So And I think a
Yeah.
lot of that's getting challenged. Currently, it looks ugly and it's tough, and people think the whole world's crumbling, but it's simply
Yeah.
just because people are waking up.
No, yeah. That's why, like we said, it's going to get worse before it gets better. I agree, but I'm still very hopeful for the future, because people are waking up, and part of a pillar, I think, of rebuilding a new sort of culture is nutritional balancing, right?
I was just about to say
Um,
that.
yeah, and people retaking their health and learning a more systems theory, systematic approach to healing people from a young age,
Yeah, a lot of
and
people are
having
starting their
people.
kids out on it now, so that's a good, that's a good thing, because the kids are great because, for one, they don't have a 50-hour a week job, they don't have responsibilities. So if your kid's going through somewhat of a small detox reaction or healing,
Mhm.
well, they just go to bed, or
Right.
they don't have anything to do. They
Yeah.
don't need to drink a coffee and go like hard charge. They can just,
Yeah.
sleep or lay around or be a little tired. And that's to me. I got a girl who's actually just got a hair test for a couple of her kids from Aaron, because I'm like, you want to start them now? They're having some health issues because they don't have any obligations. For
Yeah.
you and your husband, who's got a new business in real estate, maybe you guys wait a couple of years until that slows down, and then you do it, because you guys have to actually bring home, you're the breadwinners of the family. But you can start your kids now, and
Yeah.
they'll heal over time, and they don't have any responsibilities, and then they'll just take that with them into later in life.
I would say the children's where the program shines. It really is,
Mm-hmm.
because you can get to children. They heal much faster. They dump the metals faster. Their programs are simpler. Children only need like two or three supplements. They don't. Children don't even need to follow the diet. As in my experience, the supplements are more important than the diet actually for children.
Wow.
Yeah. So if you just give them so most children are going to be in a fast oxidation with a low NAK ratio. So it's just a couple supplements, right? And then if they're just taking their supplements a couple times a day, and then the diet, they're kids. The diet can be like 70, 80%. If they go
Right.
to the birthday party and have some cake once in a while, it's not a huge deal. It's far more important, in my experience with the children, they take the supplements than follow the diet exactly. Of course, you
Yeah.
want to try to feed them cooked vegetables and the meat and stuff. You don't try to, I'm not saying they don't need to do the diet, but
Well, hopefully
uh,
the parents are already a little bit more health
yeah,
conscious if they're going into mineral
right,
balancing. So that's kind of the food they're cooking already. I would be my idea, but that's another
right,
thing you bring up with kids. And another thought process we've thought about is kind of taking some of these formulations and making them into like powdered versions. So maybe the kids who don't like to swallow a few pills every day could maybe just like add it to milk or sprinkle it on food, something that would make it just a little bit easier to digest for, like, because sometimes people are starting their kids when they're on like 7 months old, 10 months old. So,
right.
if they can't swallow pills that well yet, maybe making some powders for people like that. Or maybe the adults want the powders and they just want to put it in a smoothie or something. Could be something simple for
Yeah,
them people as well.
yeah, yeah. I think eventually, maybe for children, you could do gummies or something would be good too.
Yeah. I don't know. The gummies might be hard. I know a buddy who makes these vitamin D gummies that are dosed for kids, which I think is pretty cool, because
Hmm.
all the vitamin D supplements you see on the market are the dosages for, adults. So he
Hmm.
kind of was trying to find something to give to his kid. And then he was just like, well, there's nothing on the market, so I'm just going to make my own vitamin D gummies that have the dosage for kids. And now he's selling them on Etsy and stuff. So that's
That's
pretty
cool.
cool. But I think that's like, the gummies could be a good idea if we could get the ratios and everything right per gummy. That might be challenging.
Right. Yeah, yeah, for sure. But yeah, like I said, the program really shines for children, in my opinion, more than anywhere else, because, like I said, they only need a couple supplements. They don't need to follow the diet exactly. They have more energy to work with, so they dump the metals faster. They can undo their traumas, both physically or whatever, faster. And yeah, people get amazed by the differences in their children. And you've seen even like some of Clark's posts and stuff. Like you can get incredible changes with children. Like people think that some of these damages are permanent, like autism and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Even things like, I'm not saying you can cure it, but even things like mental retardation. Like they've done studies where like if you give people with Down syndrome, like if they follow a better diet, right, that they have they if you score their IQ before and after, they have a higher IQ. You know what I mean? So obviously, there's a genetic component to a lot of this stuff, but people don't realize how malleable human beings are if you start them at a young age.
Yeah, and that's why I've had my wife. She started a month before me, actually, because she was having a few symptoms. So she tried the high copper protocol for a bit, was okay on it, then didn't really like it after maybe like 4 or 5 months and quit it. And then she was like, what do you think I should do? And so I sent her to Erin before I even got a test. And then when I seen her results, I'm like, all right, then I sent one in. And she's been doing it for like, so a month longer than me. So like 10 months, almost a year. And now we're trying to get pregnant. So I think that's going to be pretty cool through pregnancy to kind of make sure all her mineral levels are good and coming in while she's pregnant.
Yeah, prenatal care is another place where it shines. I would include that with like the children, like a children and prenatal care. Those are the two things where the program actually it works better in those situations than any other situation. Because if you're a 50-year-old dude that's been drinking and smoking and doing drugs their whole life, or like you have 50 years of trauma, 50 years to unwind, whereas a 2-year-old, a lot more energy to work with.
Yeah, makes sense.
And like you said, with a detox, they just sleep it off, or they might get a cold that they retrace or whatever. But yeah, I love, and children are some better clients too.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense from the trauma level because when you do remove the metals, and Susan recommended a pretty good book that I listened to called The Molecules of Emotion, which kind of talk about what like the parasites and the metals and the emotions kind of being linked. Well, when you have 30 years of emotional baggage going on and from my instance, like I would have dreams, thoughts about like stuff from high school, old relationships I was in. Like kids aren't going to have all of that to unravel, and you can almost feel crazy when you're going through that because you're like, why am I even thinking about this shit? It's pretty bizarre the level of like you just recognize like things you did to people that weren't in your most integrity. It really is because you're like, why is this like circulating right now? And it's just because you're moving around these toxins that are linked to what I don't know if this is right, but it seems like the metals were there, the toxins were there, and maybe you weren't able to process that event in that moment. Yeah. And so it kind of stuck in your nervous system or in your tissues. And then once you kind of remove that stuff, you kind of are able to see that in a different light, whether that's your past relationships, friendships, relationships with your family, how you've treated people. It's very challenging.
I would love to come on. That's a good topic. I only have a few more minutes here, but I would love to come on and talk about just that specific subject, trauma and trauma unwinding. Maybe we should be able to do that.
I would love it. Yeah, that's a cool.
I have a lot of firsthand experience with helping people with very, very intense trauma.
Oh, I would love that. We should do that next couple months.
I've learned a lot about trauma through my practice and kind of going down this path. I've learned a lot about trauma, and that's the hardest part of the program, by the way. Not the mental, not the physical stuff. Like people get detoxed or they retrace a cold or something like that. That's not the most difficult part of the program. The most difficult part of the program is unwinding trauma. And so imagine like you've been in the fog your whole life, and you see yourself in the world in a certain way, right? And then all of a sudden you start to shift, and you begin to see yourself for what you really are. It's not pretty. That's the hardest part of the program. Yeah. The destruction of the ego that can happen.
You can really look at like the ways I used to treat people, like when I was partying and stuff, and I wasn't that bad, but you remember every like little detail of the way you acted in certain instances and situations. It's crazy. And then the dreams are crazy. The dreams are like people I haven't thought about in 20 years. Yeah. It's bizarre.
Yeah, that's the hardest part of the program is the sort of ego death and the trauma unwinding, for sure, in my experience. Because it's one thing to need to sleep a little bit more or get a rash or something. It's another thing to go through that, where everything you thought about yourself was a lie. Imagine that, That's I would love to come on and talk about trauma.
Yeah, cool. I'm gonna keep doing these mineral balancing shows because I love the program. So I'm gonna try to hit every little nook and cranny I can over time. Like not just do mineral balancing every week, so people can get some diversity. But I'm gonna try to talk about every topic that I can.
All right, cool. All right, well I gotta go here in a few minutes. Well, Matt, it was nice chatting with you. I loved it.
You too, brother.
I think you're a brilliant guy. I'm glad to get hooked up to learn about you from Erin and Lewis, and I'm excited for these reformulations.
Yeah, me too. Really excited. I wish I had the zinc right now. Now that I've flipped into that mixed oxidation, I wish we had the zinc formula already. But a couple weeks
Yeah.
out, 2 to 3 probably. We're probably gonna do. I think we're looking at like a Black Friday pre-sale because just a bunch of people have been asking. So
Yeah.
because the manufacturer is not giving us like an exact date, so it's like could be the last week of November, could be the first week of December, all the way until like December 10th, or I can't remember the
Mhm.
exact dates, but it's like a 2 to 3 week period, so we don't have an exact like date. But I feel like doing Black Friday is close enough to where yeah, you might not get shipped out for a week or two, but I didn't want to make people like wait a month to get it shipped. I was like, all right, we'll inch it toward, and then Black Friday is just good. Maybe we'll give a little discount code or something for anybody who does a pre-sale and waits on their products.
Right. Right. Okay. So, where's the best place for people to follow you?
Yeah,
Instagram or
I'm
website?
at Integrative Matt on
Okay.
Instagram's where I do most of my posting. It shares directly to Facebook. I'm just Matt Coffman over there, but I don't really do much on there besides everything's just linked to my Instagram. So there are posts there, but mostly Instagram. My podcast and business is called Integrative Thoughts. So you can go integrativethoughts.com to see about my website. And then the podcast is on Spotify, Apple, at Integrative Thoughts. That's why my name on Instagram is Integrative Matt. And, I talk about a lot more than mineral balancing on there. I do relationship shows with my wife sometimes. I talk about psychedelics. I talk about lots of different biohacks and other supplements,
Mhm.
Sheila Jeet, I just did a show on just random things that intrigue me and people that I think are brilliant over there.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, I'll put a link to all three of those down below. And then if you guys have any questions, just comment down below, and then I will answer them next video I do. And yeah, it was nice chatting with you, Matt.
You too, brother. Take it easy.
All right, bye.